Every time reality gives you the chance to fulfill your whim, your desire, you definitely go and grab it. Because from the level of consciousness, an impulse immediately follows. A burst of energy comes for all of this. A capable person with knowledge quickly fulfills their whim. Just recently, a person came to me. The individual transfer of Sri Yantra. We practiced, I showed all of this. Person was in all this. Was present, saw it all, felt it, and asked me an endless number of questions. I answered those questions. And finally the transfer. The transfer of this knowledge was completed. What happens next? This person. A question asked what to do next. I ask, what do you want? I have a dream. I say, great, what's your dream? Well, a beautiful dream related to the Maldives, with a diamond at sunset. I want to experience this state with a man. I say, well, I get it, it's beautiful. I say so. What's stopping you? Well, there's no guy. Diamonds are expensive. Yeah, and I'm not in the Maldives, but here in Europe. I see. Well, now you have the tools at the level of consciousness. I'm just saying, practice with a clear intention that you want this. Explain to yours, to the facets of your consciousness, to your whirlwind of Shakti. I'll start talking a bit more like an adult about what you need from this life. She says, well, okay, fine, I'll practice. Not just practice for the sake of it, but practice with a clear intention of what I need from this life. I say, great. She meets an acquaintance who says they are going to the Maldives. With her acquaintance, with whom they had all sorts of different relationships. And this acquaintance tells her, listen, I'm heading to the Maldives. Seriously. She goes, listen. Well, you're a wealthy guy. Ah, right. I have this desire to be in the Maldives too, with you, like a diamond and all that. He says, listen. Well, if you want, let's go together. I'm okay with that. Well, diamonds, she says. How much does it cost? Well, if it's really expensive, we can rent it. Will you get through this moment? Well, it's up to you. So, how much does it cost? And it turns out that she has no idea how much it costs. And it turns out that this isn't what I wanted. It's not what I needed. The person dives into thoughts and reflections. It's not quite what I needed. And the person starts to dive into thoughts, into reflections. All of this just keeps spinning. And at that moment, we're communicating again. And I see how she closes off the possibility of getting that result. This result that was formed just with a snap of the fingers. I don't even know how much she was striving for him. Without these practices. Here, go ahead, and take it. No. Well, here, no, but this, I say, get through this moment. Take it. No one is stopping you from experiencing it again in a better way. Yeah, let today be about, well, not the best guy on this planet, just wait. On this planet. Wait a minute. Let it be not your own diamond. Although he, in principle, wasn't really refusing it. He just, got worried, like he might be too expensive. Let it be like this for now. No one is stopping you from experiencing it twice, 3 times, 4 times, each time raising the quality of that event. But a person gets immersed in their own... These right here, a person starts to get picky. And this event dissolves like morning fog. So, the one who offered it to her left, and she stayed in place. And the next one, well, I'm observing this. What's the next thing she does? Well, she starts to convince herself. What, in principle, isn't that important, is that she doesn't really need it. We're all going to die anyway. And all of this, so, a person has already fallen from the energy level to the physical level of the psyche. And at the level of the psyche, he convinces himself that he did the right thing. I look at this and say, fool. Fool. Try not to make that mistake again. This situation isn't over yet. She's developing right now in parallel on my phone. As soon as I have some time, I read the message and somehow try to encourage her to take the results of her intention. And I always say, those who have known me for a long time, who knows this example? What if you don't allow yourself, in the process of achieving your goal, To receive some interim benefits. In the end, you'll just be drinking from a puddle. Why from a puddle? Because if your goal is to drink the nectars of cherry orchards, grown with virgins on Mount Fuji, and you're in Moscow, you still have to get to that Fuji. If, while getting there, you deny yourself the pleasure of drinking, then most likely you'll end up drinking from a puddle. If you refuse to drink while getting there, then you'll end up drinking from a puddle. You won't make it in time. Thirst will torment you. But if you say, yes, my goal is over there, but today I'll have some mineral water, and on the plane, I'll drink some juice, and when I arrive, I'll go to a restaurant and eat. Well, I'll have some sake there. It doesn't mean you can't keep moving towards that goal. Go ahead, achieve it. There are no problems. Well, I'll have some sake. That doesn't mean you can't keep moving towards that goal. Go ahead, achieve it. There are no problems. And just like that, 1, 2, 3. And got the result exactly the way you wanted to see it. Absolutely satisfied, absolutely happy. Not constrained, not violated by your own, some kind of internal positions. So, every time reality gives you the chance to fulfill your whim, your desire, you absolutely must go and take it. And why does this happen? Why does a person start to complicate things? Because he has pride. He has a sense of his own importance. No, I like that, but that's not. Denying the fact of who you are here and now. That's how you are. When I started teaching people individually, someone would come in, we'd practice, everything was good. Someone else would come in, we'd practice, everything was good. I'm starting to fade away. I become, well, like a matter of course. Let me just take a break here. I'll let go. Let me downgrade a bit here. Let me mess around with some nonsense over there. Someone comes in easy with them. At some point you're like, wait a minute, this is my task. Not to be a teacher. I don't want to be a teacher. My task is to fulfill my own intention. How do I fulfill it? I need to train. I need to teach myself. I can't teach myself with the people who come to me because it's easy for me with them. I have this like reality. Of course, I understand everything. But the priority is still to achieve the realization of my intention. And inside, my heart started racing right away. And my mind said, do you realize who's going to start coming to you? And my body also tensed up. Why? Because from the level of consciousness, an impulse immediately goes out. A whole package of energy is sent out for all of this. He hasn't reached you yet, but he's already headed in your direction. And your whole being knows about it. And it knows that if this energy package has been sent out, then a time of change is coming. And this is the time of change. Our psyche. It's constantly dampened. The mind doesn't like change. She likes everything to be predictably stable. Why? A typical, technical feature of a person. We see the surrounding world with a delay. Signal delay? So the brain has to calculate ahead of time, so we don't crash into things, so to speak. Of course, it all happens in milliseconds, but it still all gets taken into account. That's why our brain always reacts defensively. This is the upcoming change. Even to the point where you might start to feel a little shaky. Before some serious processes, before a serious choice, everything starts to vibrate. And so, when someone signed up for an individual consultation after my statement, a person signed up for an individual consultation, and my jaw started to tremble. I was like, wow, who's coming in so interesting? A person in military uniform came in. The first one at the threshold says, well, I think that all of this bullshit. It's all nonsense. The only one says, I had a situation. Yeah, I just came straight from the product. Here you go, someone signed up. I had a situation that I don't understand. I want you to explain it to me, since you understand all this. But he says, all is not interesting. I understand what I want. Well, close the door, give him his money back. Well, forget it. Let him take the money. I'd even pay him extra just to get out. It's tough, right? Yeah, well, first of all, the person has real combat experience. The one that's happening right now. He came back, and he was initially negative towards me, and he wants to poke around in those questions where, well, it's not practical. It's not some spiritually inclined thing. It's just a person who has faced a certain moment. And it'll even be hard for me to find the right words for him, because he doesn't know about chakras. Yeah, I gathered myself and remembered how this world is. We can only quickly get into situations that we can handle. I say, here we practice, and over there is the bathroom. Answer there. All right, let's go. And I start interacting with him. I don't start trying to convince him. I don't start fighting with him. That I'm cooler, I know I can do more. I start having a conversation with him, focusing on my own state, because I understand that if I lose my state right now, it's the end for me. That's it. It will be a conflict. It won't be any kind of practice anymore. I listen to him as much as my attention allows. I clarify things with him. I talk to him. But the focus is on my state, and I can feel it. I'm doing this. He starts talking again, and he just keeps on going, and I'm like, wait. And I am just sitting there thinking, wait. Why do I perceive this as nonsense? A passionate, tough person is rigid. His values lead him into a trench. In a very motionless state, he has a system of values that can only lead him into a trench. There's no other way. And so, gently, little by little, I start to interact constantly, monitoring my state so that everything works for me, so that everything flows. I don't choose my words carefully. I don't try to convince him. In some way, I don't drop down to the level of thought, at the level of intellect, where I might overwhelm him, if he can't feel anything right now, and he's not there. I just interact with him. It just flows through me somehow, and he starts to relax. He starts to gradually let go too, and we begin to synchronize, to tune into each other. So I'm not dragging him along. I won't push. I won't put pressure on myself. He subconsciously looks at me, like, damn, he's not bad. What was he doing? And after 2 hours of conversation, not sorting out the relationship, but a conversation about all the nuances, facets, we went far from spirituality, returned to spirituality. I didn't say what was right. I spoke from my perspective. Like this, like that, in a more promising and pleasant way. Well, in this situation, I would have acted like this and like that. So you acted like that? I would have acted differently, and potentially it would have been much more beautiful. And he starts to relax, let go, and I can see that his state is now synchronized. I say, come on, let's practice. I start to show him the 5th gates. He perceives them, meaning the person is just stuck in their own state. He starts to let go a bit, and by the end he says, I want to learn from you. I say, but I'm not teaching. Well, not exactly. I say, no, as of today, I only have consultations for now because I just don't have enough time for anything else. And interacting with me, initially the person was charged to go back. So right now, just quickly exhale, spend some money, and then jump back in there. During our conversation, I made it clear to him that if he goes back there, he will stay there for good, meaning that's the end. In the end, he agrees with me saying, I feel it myself. So I basically went a little deeper into all of this. And it wasn't him who started telling me. I say, well, look, if you're going back there, he initially says he sees that my state isn't changing, that I'm still just flowing as I was. So I wasn't trying to scare him. He says, damn, I feel that too. He says, I want to be helpful. I want to assist. I want to do this. In the end, again, we reached a point in our conversation where he decided to open up. Courses, a club. And in this club, he wants to fulfill his desire, to be helpful in this area. Already here. Not where the bombs are falling from the sky. And he's happy. He felt the energy. Now he has the opportunity to develop further if he wants to. And I'm endlessly happy that I managed to get through this situation. Although, my first impulse was just to give him his money back and close the door. And only by trusting these rules did I push myself through it. Then people came to me. All different people. It was the same level of difficulty, but it was already refining my skill, refining my abilities. And then I raised the bar even higher. When a person comes to me, or rather, when a person just sends a message, I pick up the phone and realize that this phone feels like it's gotten 10 kilograms heavier, because the person who wrote to me is in a really bad place. Everything. It's really bad there, everything, and people started coming in. And I never positioned myself as a healer. I still say, I'm not a healer, leave me alone, go somewhere else. So people with very serious illnesses started coming to me, and I also had to interact with them. So they come in, but not in a way that says, heal me. Yeah. And since it turned out that I found myself in this situation, well, let's take it slow and figure it out. And this is even more complicated than when a person is tough. In the mental realm, in the mental position is not that scary. When his position has already reached the point of destruction of the body, it is even more voluminous. The spectrum of work, I said, okay, fine. If such people came to me, it means I already have the strength to deal with them. They won't drag me down with them anymore. lightness, adventure, constantly. It's this game within yourself. No importance, none at all. This one here of the seriousness of the event. And it's very important to be aware of your own state. Your own state. You feel like the conversation is going off track. Look at yourself. At that moment, you're like this. In that state, the conversation always goes off track. It will come in, no matter how prepared you are for it. I exhaled. It flowed. I said, wait, something has taken us off track here. Let's do it one more time. And you burn, you flow, you burn, you flow. The heart, the center works, the channel works, it flows. 111, everything's here. The next story is about a woman. I've told this story before, but it's going to be relevant now. A woman from high management, a large company, deals with electricity, deals with equipment. She came to me, and she was recommended by some shaman from Vladivostok. How all of this has formed in the space, I have no idea at all. She comes to me and says, actually, it wasn't even like that. She writes to me and says, I want to interact with you. I said, well, there's this site, that site, this site, please, everything is there. She says, no, I want to come to you just to chat. I was like, not really, but sure, okay. At that time, I was just getting started, so I basically had enough time. I said, all right, let's do it. She arrives and says, look, I was in Vladivostok or in Vladivostok? Well, it doesn't matter, in short, far away somewhere there. We did our practices there, and when I asked the question, who somewhere in Moscow is there a more or less sane, some local shaman, he said, well, I saw a guy on the internet. He seems okay. I don't even know who that is. So she comes to me and says, well, here's my story, so let's see what you can do. I said, all right, let's sit down and practice. And we start having regular individual sessions with her. In the very first session, I start explaining to her that, all of this is great, the energy and all that. But if your heart isn't on fire, if there's no love in you, then, well, sooner or later, you're going to get stuck. That's when a demon awakens in her, and it's like, wait a minute, you say there's no love, I'm here. So, basically, sooner or later, you're going to get stuck. That's when a demon awakens in her, and it's like, wait a minute, you say there's no love? I'm here. Yeah, I just noticed very clearly right now how it's within you. And she's like, damn, that's right. She says, how is that? I said, well, look, love isn't just a form of your behavior. Love is not that what you hear from other people. You can come to some certain places to a thirsty person and say, I love you. He'll say, oh my God, love, everything's great. And that's not at all what I'm talking about. Because love is first and foremost energy. It's the energy that moves from the bindu to the heart, where there is wholeness and unity. And she, going through many, many, many levels of the soul, ultimately bursts out. Creating space around it, I say, so where's that energy that's bursting out of your heart right now? I can see it in you. Right now, a knife is going to jump out of your pocket. Yeah, the one you're going to throw at me. It's just as I said that there's no love in you. She's like, wait. She says, well, then show me. I said, what, are you a psychic? She says, well, I've done a lot there too. What were you doing? I say, let's go, come on, practice. And we start practicing. Literally about 15-20 minutes pass. Her facial expression completely changes. I mean, her features become relaxed. Her face relaxes, her eyes light up, and her shoulders finally drop. She kind of blurs a little. Well, you can always tell when a person is tense, in a combat position. And when he finally enters this state of tranquility, I say, look, right now your heart is starting to open up. I say, I'm talking about this. She's looking at her state. Well, the person was really, was and is very well prepared, let's say. She says, so, what can you do? What else do you have? I say, well, look, there are practices for shedding the cocoon. There are practices for the fiery pillar. Well, and the pinnacle, the crown of all this is Shriyan. She says, all right, let's start. Europe, 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 Europe. I say, this practice is for 9 days, and the next practice is also for 9 days. Yantra, that's another 9 days. She says, well, okay, fine, that's it. I'm like, all right, let's go. If we're starting, then let's start. I've never had a situation where someone just came in and completely agreed to it calmly. Mostly, someone will struggle a bit. Do something like that. Oh, that's it, no. Well, I don't know, maybe we'll continue in a year. It's just so hard and complicated. And here it's completely different. Well, again, the person is from big business. There's no time for self-pity. She comes to me after work. I'm like, are you okay? She's like, I'm fine. We start practicing, and here I probably saw a person for the first time who is really from big business. So, despite her physical fatigue, despite her mental and emotional exhaustion, she still somehow kept drawing from that resource. And she kept doing the actions that they show her. So, to stay committed to the practice, we finished, she disappeared. She was frozen. Spread out? She was still for a while. This intense work ethic is crucial for anyone aiming for something cosmic, like our current experience. It's not just about working. An integral part of the path of a person who indeed claims something truly cosmological, something where we are now. It's not about work, because you can work. Looking to see where the boss is sitting, huh? I turned away. I work. Oh, how much longer do I have to work? It was her work ethic, meaning she was completely immersed in the process. She was clinging to the remnants of her perception, holding on to the last of her resources, which were quickly running out. And even at that moment, I say, well, that's it, I'm out of breath. Now she says, wait. She'll take a breath, relax, and says, well, let's do everything now. I can see that she really took a breath, she relaxed a bit, she wasn't trained. I have this, but she did everything right. She tried to unclench herself as much as possible. How much is this possible? To let a little more flow into her, for consciousness to flow in, to touch those processes that I'm showing. For 9 days, just like a robot, like a Terminator. I don't know, like a cyborg. She worked after her job. She accomplishes. While not working, she was putting in the effort, practicing the techniques that I showed. As a result, we complete this course, the cocoon flies off her, she perceives it all absolutely clearly. I'm like, well, please write down whatever. She kind of means, so we continue. And, without any break, without any exhale, on this common wave, we move forward. We create a fiery column, we move on, we create the Yantra, and after we finished the training and took a moment to reflect on what we learned, now I see what qualities I was lacking. There is top management, who can handle it, and there is me, who couldn't squeeze in there. She says, now I see what qualities were missing in me. And that's exactly why I couldn't get in there. She definitely has the ability to work, but certain qualities of consciousness were dormant in her, were closed, and now, when she touched them in a comfortable situation, she was unable to, in that crazy business where you don't even have time to think, but when she looked at it in comfort, in a natural state, she immediately drew an analogy with those people she knew, saying, whoa, everything is on fire for them, but why isn't anything burning for me? I said, so. She said, whoa, everything is on fire for them, but why isn't anything burning for me? I said, all right, ignite it, let it burn. I say, so, ignite it, burn. Right away, she calculated this in terms of perception. What she needs to become, what she needs to be like. And we started meeting once a week. To practice, I had nothing left to teach her. Practice, support, sometimes yes, it overwhelmed her, and she would come to me to catch her breath. These were the supportive practices. Sometimes we would, on the contrary, jump up to that level where I train myself, where I'm not just like, okay, now I'll show you, but where I train myself. It was all different. But a person, while working on their energy, after a short period of time, she reached the real level of being in the space that she was striving for. And so was she satisfied? She said that everything is fine. Yeah, no, she moved here and said that she wants to be president. I'm like, why the hell do you need that? Well, if you want, sure, I'll vote for you, because countries, at least I'm sure about you, yeah, our country, the Russian Federation. Well, that was at that moment. Now, of course, her position has changed even more. Her vision has expanded even further. Her, let's say, wishes have become even more expansive. But the fact is, now she has all the tools. She actively uses these tools. She knows, she compares, she sees why some people succeed while she doesn't. And she changes herself in order to to reach this level, to step over those who are succeeding, to climb even higher, to expand oneself even more. It releases these energies. Her psyche is constantly transforming. She is becoming more and more unflappable. Because the way it could have been pricked before, now you can't even break it. Your finger will just burn off if you try to poke it. Well, I'm exaggerating. So a capable person, with knowledge quickly fulfills all their whims. So, the people who come to me with material claims about this world, just know that you don't need to work at jobs. You need a very high level of capability. And this ability to work goes hand in hand with knowledge. If a person works hard but lacks knowledge, knowledge will come, but it will take a long time. And likely it won't be him who benefits from this knowledge, but his children. When they grow up, he will instill this in them. That's it. Easier for a kid, but he's done for. He won't make it. But when does he acquire this knowledge? From the surrounding world. For those who succeed, because obviously you don't need to extract knowledge from a person who can't make use of it. They can't be a guide. Cannot use them? He can't be a guide. He gains the ability to fulfill all his whims, essentially living several lives in one. So, I'm gradually developing my thought further. When people of different ages come to me, I had an incident. A woman came in, a teacher, and her position was like this. She said, "Now I understand." Well, I understand how it should be, how it's supposed to be. But children, students who come to me, they don't hear me. I just can't get my knowledge across to them. She retired? Respectfully, well, likely she has retired. I didn't clarify, but it feels that way. And she understands that her teaching career is coming to an end. This teacher is in a tough spot. Her teaching career is coming to an end, but she has a need, an unmet need, and I understand that this unmet need will prevent her from moving forward properly. Because we need to fulfill our needs, we definitely have to, I explained to her, say, look, leave your students alone. Don't interfere with their lives. In response, a wave of misunderstanding. What are you talking about? I came to you to figure out how to cram this into them. And you tell me, don't do that at all, basically. I say, that's right, you heard me correctly, but there's still no understanding. So I say, okay, so what to do, how to be? I say, look, you have your own state and access to an audience of people. I say everything you need to do. Access to an audience of people. I say everything you need to do so that they can hear you. It's in order to show them your state and to demonstrate it in such a way that your state far exceeds their state, so that you would be like a Christmas tree. And they would focus their attention on you because of that. This is applicable in many different situations. But here it's a specific story. She's like, wait, he says, person is interested. Already this rejection is starting to weaken. She says, how does this work? I say, well, look, we're having a one-on-one consultation right now. Out of the vast multitude of people that the internet is filled with, for some reason, you came to me. I say, I'm actually an esoteric. I have no connection to students or education. I spent half my life in meditation. I say, well, for some reason, something in you said, go to him. I say, why? So why did you choose me? I say, you came to me, an esoteric, a person who focuses their attention on the original, asking how to convey your life experience to the student. I say, why did you do that? And here the person lowers their defenses even more. These rejections lower their defenses even more. She says, wait, but really, why did I choose you? How did it work out like that? I say, and now I'm explaining. Each and every single time I find myself stepping into the classroom, it doesn't matter if it's through the camera, knowing that it will be later, or openly, I pay very close attention to my state. I don't allow myself to the generation of constricting, spasming processes. And I start explaining to her, we react differently. Our energy can block or accelerate. We can react in a way that our energy gets blocked. We can react in a way that it speeds up. We can ignite and accelerate the flow of energy through our body for some reasons. And for the same reasons, we can react differently. On the contrary, by spasming and constricting ourselves, only we, only you, only I determine what the reaction will be. There are an infinite number of possible situations. If you build your attitude to the situation according to a template, no one will ever flare up. We will fade away eventually. If we always bring these templates out to practice, to strengthen our state, then an extra way to practice, an extra way to surpass the strength of your state. You will become unflappable. No matter what happens, the person starts agreeing with me. She says, so what should the state be like? I say, here it is. And now we start practicing, and we start practicing together. I show her first with the tips of my fingers, hands, and feet. She's like, I'm totally into all of this. I say, quiet, quiet. I say, just direct your attention, nothing more is needed. Focus your attention on the tips of your fingers. What do you feel? Well, something tingles, something pinches. I say, there you go, wonderful. So we sat down and talked about those tips. I say, look, how about you feel something beyond the physical body? People lean towards materialism, is more inclined towards the materialistic world. And in her head, so at the same time she's voicing her thoughts like, well, I'm just feeling my physical body. Well, I can feel something in my knee. This is the physical body. I say, okay, now look, move back a centimeter from your finger. Where the body is gone, and she describes what she feels. I say, go ahead, you don't need to hold back, just tell me what's going on. She's like, wait, she says, it feels even better over there. And she starts to observe her energy without any preparations. Without all that, like you need to pray, you need to sit down, you need to position your fingers correctly. So she sees her energy. I say, look, I say, what's up with you? What's up? I say, and now do the same with your heart. And I understand that just to open your heart like that randomly, it can only be, well, some kind of miracle has to happen. But because the person has already gone through their journey, she has a wealth of knowledge. She has it. This inner condescension towards the youth. Those endless students have long since worn her out. Well, the complaints, these harsh ones that someone is right and someone is wrong. Still, when a person talks to children, something good happens. With children, they turn out well. With children, with young people, they still become something good. Still, even soldiers can soften. Hard-hearted. Or if you're in the army, even in the army still. When there have been such cases still, a person becomes softer over time. Toughness brings success. The world is a bit different. The tougher you become, the more right things happen. And because she had a huge baggage of her own experience, she was already quite relaxed. On the acceptance of that, somewhere there's diversity, and you can't just lump everyone together. I think, well, what if it doesn't work out well? I say, now look, the same thing should flow from the heart. She's like that, right? Well, come on, I say, let's go. And so, from my side, I'm pouring out as much as I can, and she's trying to find something similar with the tips of her fingers, how it flows, and little by little, there she is, in this relaxed, blissful state, in our pleasant conversation, where all the shields are down. Don't resist. She says, oh, I'm starting to feel this warmth. Yeah. She says, it's like, well, when you love, you feel it like that. I say, yeah, it's like when you love, but when you love something specific, it can fade away. Yeah, well, a year will pass, and there we are with my husband going back and forth. I say, yeah, so when it's conditioned, well, I carefully explain it, and she's already sitting there feeling it. She's observing, and I'm telling her about it. I say, look, now in that same state, just go out to the audience, I say, and simply say whatever you want. Whatever you want, I say, just say it, it will be received. She says, I understand you. She says, I understand why I chose you, because your heart is on fire when you tell your story. I say, yes, and it's just that I'm not proving anything to anyone. I'm not trying to convince anyone or prove anything. I'm just showing it with my inner state, and I repeat it. A set of words, when it flows synchronously, then everything works out. And when I'm all tense and tight here, I'm just throwing it out from memory. No one will perceive that, because all people, aside from their conscious perception, also perceive each other subconsciously in this way. And those students, if they see she's tense, her quality of life drops. The heart determines vitality, so they won't perceive her truths. Her quality of life drops. And the heart is exactly what determines a person's vitality, so they won't perceive whatever truth she tries to convey to them. They just won't perceive it. It gets filtered out completely. But she saw how it works on two levels, on the energy level, on the level Well, it's probably the psyche. Yes, after all, speaking is more about the psyche. I say, that's it, I got it all. That's it, she says. You answered my question. Now I know how to convey it to them. I say, great, don't forget. The person satisfied went to take care of business. What's all this about? To the fact that when you encounter a situation in one way or another, of sharing your views with others, whether it's your child, partner, or parents. It's your own child, it's your business partner, it's your elderly parents, who are no longer really able to change at all, to at least transform in some way and strive for something because they are rapidly fading away. When you try to interact with it somehow, with the hope that everything will be fine, know that they don't primarily perceive you with their ears, they perceive your state with their subconscious. And they will react exactly that way. What impulses from the subconscious will go into their skull? And if their subconscious says, this state is very commendable, and they'll say, wait, what were you saying? They will all be interested. When I first started getting into esotericism, I was quite a difficult person because I had to fight just about everything. A difficult person because I had to fight totally. With everyone, the union just collapsed. No one knows how to live properly. Everyone is trying to fill their pockets with money. Because there were no other values at that time, I saw more than matter and resisted. I realized that there is something more than matter. While everyone was trying to push me into materialism, I was resisting. I was quite sharp, aggressive like that. I was quite sharp, aggressive like that. Okay. Hello. All right, it doesn't matter. I can find words. They just slipped out of my mind. And of course, I was fighting with my parents. And of course, they did everything they could to stop me from going where I wanted. They see any of my acquaintances as cults and cultists. Any visit to any events. Now they're going to take his apartment away from him. That's it. They're going to take everything from him. I would come in and they would just pour all this into my head. I was fighting it off. I was getting angry, saying, yeah, stop talking to me about this. I tried to stay silent, just ignore it, to just go into my own little corridor. This one, I mean, I've done everything. This fight was long, and at some point I just left. I just moved out of the apartment. I just stopped living with them. I didn't slam the door loudly. It wasn't like, yeah, that's it, I told you guys. I thought, I'll try to do this on my own, because it was just too stuffy, really stuffy already. I think I'll try to do it on my own positively, because it's really stuffy, very stuffy already. Here it is. I started to develop myself independently, and at some point I told my mom and dad, I'm going out on my own. I quit my job. That's how it is. I would call them, but back then, it was such a time that there was no roaming, so I had to go to those phone booths. Yeah, some things were starting to appear, but not at that level. I would call back sometimes. And back then, it was such a time that there was no roaming, so I had to go to those phone booths. Yeah, some things were starting to appear, but not at that level. What I could do is call from my phone, and now there's Telegram, Zoom, anything. From any point in the world, as long as there is internet there, it doesn't matter, there is this internet. Calling Moscow was a problem. I could call maybe once every month or so. So I'm living like this, I'm healthy, everything's fine, I'm doing well, all good for now. And I was learning, I was fully immersed, taking care of my own things. At some point, there were many more intermediate events. And at some point, it just happened that I returned to Moscow again. It just happened that I returned to Moscow again. I realized that my journey as a student was over. I wouldn't be a student anymore. I understood I needed to move forward from the knowledge I had gained rather than an eternal student. That I had gained and not be this eternal student. And I realized that I had no money at all because everyone has long forgotten about my existence. So I went to my parents knowing that they were probably going to celebrate the fact that I had failed, because I came back empty-handed. So I didn't succeed. So we were right, now we'll push you, force you to go to work, get a 10th education, something like that. Well, like everyone else, it's common to have 2 or 3 degrees. Back then it was still trendy. I understood, but it was confusing. And then I thought, what am I doing? I know that I'm already trained. Everything is about my state. Everything depends on my vibrations. I'm already trained that everything depends on my inner state. Everything depends on the vibrations that are flowing from me. So what vibrations are flowing from me? Well, then, according to my teachings, ideally, it's when I'm just on fire. Istika, I can't just burn, flow from heart, need 4th center, channels in head, hands, legs. It doesn't work if I don't have at least the 4th center for the energy to move from there. It doesn't work if there's at least a channel in the head, in the hands, and in the legs. So we painted a picture for ourselves. Well, okay, that's it. I take this state, carefully pull it out of myself, and I gently knock on the door. Ma opens the door for me. I say, Ma, I'm back, I'm doing well. He was like, and relaxed. So she also had a script prepared which she couldn't start to put into action. She just couldn't. So like, that's it. I'm like, well, she says, so what are you planning to do? I say, well, right now, little by little, I say, I'll take a breather, look for a job, and then I'll somehow get going again. Well, okay, she says, I can help you with money. It would be nice for a start. She says, well, okay, you can take it from the shelf. Not in the sense that they are rich, they've never been rich, but here, the contrast, when the parent used power to try to stop me, used all his levers of influence to try to stop me. When she told me, if you leave, we will cut you off from the inheritance. That couldn't stop me. Once determined, I persist until self-convinced. Probably, to some extent, that also played a role, my mental trait that if I set my mind on something, I won't back down until I convince myself otherwise. So it's pretty much impossible to convince me from the outside until the point when, to the point when, well, she naturally probed the situation saying, listen, everything you've been doing. I say, Mom, everything I've been doing has only made me more convinced that this is the way it is. I say, I'm not backing down from this. That's it. And I hold my state. I hold my ground, saying it out loud. I hold my ground that where I studied, everything is wonderful. The person I trained, he's strong, no questions, no complaints. And I hold my ground. The first time there was no argument with me. There was none of that. Battles. She says, well, all right. She says, well, what about you? There's food in the fridge. We'll help with the money. She says, so when are you planning to go to work? She says, well, now I'll see what's going on, what kind of people are needed here. And after that, there were a few more moments when, due to some circumstances, I was traveling to visit, well, just to see my parents. I haven't lived with them for a long time, but I see them quite often. Already the parents, to this day, I've visited them. And every time I actually came to them for some reason, I brought along my issues. I brought those problems with me. They were reminiscing. They were just reminiscing about that sect. I'm like, Mom. Then I thought, wait, where, Mom? Where am I? What? Where? Where am I? I lost all of this. Wait. 1111111. I'm like, Mom, what's up? Well, I remembered that. And that's it. She was relaxing too. This is how much it correlated. It's like a needle and thread. Only from my state. And so if I arrived in a state, even a rumpled one, I would immediately quickly remember and return to that state. Right here, the beginning of that conflict would dissipate, and that's it, it's gone. But there were times something would grip me that it created an internal, nasty kind of state. An internal one. This is such a nasty state. When you know perfectly well what you should do, what's right, but you still do something wrong. Who you doing for? Why are you doing this? Wrong. But I think everyone has experienced this, where you know that if you say just one more word, it will just blow up. So, I'll say this word. I still hit the table with my fist. Why? Who the hell knows why? Such a presence. And I had that presence too. But I haven't played around with this enough yet, deserving to such an extent that I think, well, screw it. And then yes, then she would remind me of everything. Then she would just pull all of this out, lay it all out, and start throwing all her complaints at me. I fought back against that, both this and that. But that no longer worked. Inside me, that wasn't it. With some act like that, she insulted me, she hurt me, she said that my Auchan was some kind of, that wasn't in me. I'm thinking, what the hell is happening to me? Yeah, how do I stop this? Yeah, why the hell did I even start all this? Well, I already know all of this, how it works. So why did I fall back into this again? Did you step on those old rakes again? And every time, seeing this contrast, every time realizing that all of this could have been avoided. Just this, a little bit of importance, well, just a little bit less of this principled stance. And every time, indeed, seeing this contrast, I mentally transformed. Because mentally, I was initially shaped to be quite principled. A pretty tough, quite unprincipled, and even to some extent a cruel person. But my psyche changed over time, and it didn't change through some of those psychological trainings, and it changed when I saw, clearly realizing that I, myself, create around myself this conflict a person just led already. By my actions, my deeds. And I saw this not only with my mom, who was very much affected by my influence, because there was under my influence, because they're romantic, a parent, a relative, the relationships are still much closer. But all of this extends to other people. And so, when I interact with other people, for example at work, there were situations when I would come to work, I just didn't really feel like working. I wanted to take a breath, take a rest and don't exercise. Some kind of research, obvious, because the research was on such territory has not been studied. It is not something that can be Googled and quickly create the appearance of work from the internet. Well, this is exactly where no one knows how to do it right. Well, digging into this can really wear you out emotionally, and I just carefully navigate through it. Today we face conflict, but knowing these maneuvers, I navigate it. And a little bit knowing these processes, knowing these maneuvers, I just carefully navigate through it. That's where the OR starts. At me, I'm that. I start responding something, and then in the evening he asks me, so, what did you do today? I say, well, what do you mean? We argued all day today. I said, we argued about that. He's like, damn. He says, tomorrow, basically, don't text me at all. I just spent the whole day texting with him. I didn't do anything at all. And it just didn't sink in for me. It was more than a game. The person was serious. Some kind of adventurousness. And the person who was arguing with me and pushing their points, I could see that he was taking it very seriously. This relates to that. He was really all about that. But his seriousness didn't lead to anything further. Why? Because as soon as my workday ended, I stopped playing my role. That's the opposing side, like that. And I'm like, oh, I'm heading home. He's like, wait, we haven't finished yet, right? There's this vibe, like, we're not done. I say, come on, all right, you're right, fine, let's go. Let's wrap it up. And you know, right now it feels like they're pulling the support out from under him, and he's like, well, I won. Well, it's kind of strange, I won. It feels like I still ended up with this anhedonia. And I was just having fun with these things. And every time when in my life I faced a situation that got to me and I could get that angry, I was like, whoa, I thought I was a saint, but it turns out not at all. I'm not a saint, and now I understand why. I'm not a saint, and now I see why my aspirations aren't fulfilled. But it turns out I'm not a saint at all, and that's why what I aspire to still isn't being given to me. What I'm aiming for is still not being given to me. And this is where it gets really interesting. Besides, the increasing complexity of people. Those who came to me, as I mentioned earlier, when I said I need to train, I need to practice, I need to realize my intention. I don't want to become a teacher and drone on about the same thing for 20 years of my life, and then retire. I don't want that. I want to realize myself. I said this when I positioned myself like that. Other people started to come. But there was a moment when the unreal began to trust talented people. I was no longer afraid of the complex, but worried about not harming or pushing them away. Very talented people. Where I was no longer afraid of the heavy and complex, where I started to worry about how I wouldn't harm this person, how I wouldn't push him away. Somewhere over there where the dark forest is, in other words, how I wouldn't overwhelm him. These inner qualities. And it was exactly these kinds of people that reality began to trust me as I became more and more safe for them. So these inner hooks of mine were gradually dissolving and get me to the emotion, get me to a shaky state. It was becoming more and more difficult to generate a spasm. And so over time, strengthening my inner state, burning and flowing. Every time I changed something in myself, every time a much better person appeared, talented, like an energy worker, like a practitioner. Sometimes people would come to me, basically, how does it usually go? So, I'm looking at a person, and a message comes in. Right away, I already had a certain perception formed. Like, okay, I need to make sure I open the photo. If there's no photo, there's nothing to open. I open the photo, look at it, and read him, read the energy field. Well, I apply extrasensory perception. Yeah, right. And also more nuances popped up because it's easier. That's great. I already have a clear idea of who is coming to me. A person starts to approach, and about an hour before, their energy field is already being read. Well, it's like he's right in front of you about an hour before, roughly. Then you open the door, and there's even closer interaction. Well, at that point, it's all just obvious. I don't know. You have to be blind, not to notice who has come to you. And I'm reading the final moment. Yeah, when a person comes in, beginning to kick off those internal processes, slowly starting these internal processes. What did he come to me with? I'm looking again, and basically I already know what's going to happen next. I open the door? No, I don't open it. The person is writing. I respond and feel like someone is crawling over me. I'm like, oh, how interesting. That's how it turns out. I'm like, okay. A person arrives, I open the door, and I can see how they start to just reading through like an X-ray, scanning. I'm like, oh, some kind of psychic has arrived. I say, so why do you need me? Well, right from the threshold, I say, why do you need me? I say, you can do everything, right? He says, is it that noticeable? I say, it's noticeable. You're standing there scanning me right now. He says, well, okay. Like, he says, I have a question. And we're already starting not like this kind of interaction. I don't know anything. Come on, explain it to me. And the interaction starts, look, and in this case, how do you do it? And how do you feel about this? And what about this? So we start interacting on a completely different level. So it's like two people doing the same things, but just from different sides. So she was just curious. What I do from the position of my tradition, that is how I act. And that happened more than once. There was actually one situation where I called some women on Skype. We also got connected. She says, oh, I understood the difference in what you're doing during the sessions. Yes, and so I should try that too. It's just that she saw that with any of her, it's like this, well, maybe the right word to use is provocation, but it's not a mean provocation, you know? It's more about provoking me to see how I would react. How I would react, and every time I reacted to any of her provocations, with a burst of fire in my heart. There you go. She watched and said, well, I'll try it too, she said. And that's it. And that's how our interaction ended. That's it. So people started coming to me on their own, already with abilities, already on their own with some of their own skills, already on their own with some of their own perspectives. That was cool. But if I had those hooks, then our hooks would make us argue. So, most likely our interaction would lead to an argument. So we would just clash like two rams. I said, no, I'm right. She would say, no, I'm right. I said, yeah, I already had 100 people. She was like, and I don't know how many people I have there. So it would have been a completely different type of conversation. What's all this about? Again, what are you striving for? Whatever you want. Whatever goals you set for yourself. It all starts with you. If we try to indeed fit ourselves into the rules of dogma, right or wrong, correct or incorrect, according to the canons, or not according to the canons, then we will not go anywhere. We will bury ourselves in these rules. If we focus on our inner state and react exactly how we would want others to have reacted to us over the past year, and we are not perfect, here, holy angels, we should strive to react in the same way. And when you demonstrate this skill in real-life situations, not just like, that's it, I'm a different person now. Yeah, sure, tell me how you're a different person in the middle of a bus, I don't know, during rush hour. Yeah, and another person is absolutely the same. Because as soon as they trample all over you, you'll be, well, indistinguishable. But when you start demonstrating this in reality, she always looks at you. When someone steps on your foot and you have a burst of love in your heart, when someone tells you that you're wrong, what do you say? Nonsense, that everyone completely disagrees with you. And in general, no one acts like that. And you react with a burst of love in your heart. So at some point, You just emerge. You emerge into another layer of communities and spaces. But to emerge, you still need to show what you can do. And in most cases, the first few times you'll show this easily. And then this will come. A situation, a person, a moment where you can react faster than you think and respond with your old patterns. Checking yes, as it were. You could say that it's a test, sure. But I still don't really want to agree with that word. Because a test implies, what is it for that someone is interested in this? Someone is testing you. Someone has an interest in you. My experience shows that reality is structured in such a way that we can move in any direction. We can do anything. Well, we can do anything. And if we take off our rose-colored glasses and endless outrage and just look out the window at what people are doing out there, no one just drops dead. God doesn't strike anyone down with lightning for an act that everyone would say is the work of a complete scoundrel. But these complete scoundrels keep on living. So the obvious conclusion can be made, that's it. But you can be punished and even locked in a cage for life. Other people. And from this, a very simple rule emerges. If you want to fulfill some very questionable need, well, just find people with questionable needs and fulfill them as much as you want. Hence the rule, it's like my personal life, I do what I want. So, globally, we can allow ourselves. That's everything that comes to mind. There's a place for everyone here, but you need to realize that you live among people. And these people can really mess up your life if you're trying to get something from them that they don't have. Such cases. When I ask person question, I ask, what do you spend your attention on? What do you spend the most time on during the day? Where did this question come from? A person writes too. He says, listen, I practice, I train regularly, but nothing is happening. I say, wonderful. Let's get right into it. I say, a day has passed. What did you spend your attention on? I say, great. Now let's count how much attention you held on your energy and how much time you held your attention on the outside world. Yeah, there's a crazy difference, like 1% to 99%. I say, so what do you want from me now? Oh, how is it all now? What now? I say, look. Try to find a way to interact with the outside world while keeping your attention inward. And the person starts to try all of this. And suddenly it turns out, it turns out that apparently there is like a harmful habit, attachment, which pulls to pull your attention away from yourself, although you can move like that completely calmly. That's when I first started practicing. I was tired. I was really exhausted by one person. I couldn't handle more than one person a day. So he was draining me. Yeah, I could manage to interact, but every time I closed the door, I would just lie down like, phew. Tomorrow someone is coming. Why? Because I still hadn't trained myself to hold and manage my attention. I was constantly in the field of that person. I was constantly monitoring their energy. I was constantly scanning them, but my attention was just on him. So at that moment, his importance was more important. Myself, his state was more important than my own state. So in the value system, he was more important than my own soul. This is what it looks like technically. I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work. I don't like this. I started interacting with people differently. I started paying attention not only to the person's energy, but also to my own energy. The very fact that I was already paying attention to my own energy was bringing my focus back inside. So I kind of hold the person, then let them go. I hold them, lets them go. Then I raise the stakes even higher. I started interacting with people, not allowing the possibility, the fading of my heart. If my heart started to fade, I would go inside myself to maintain the quality of the talk. I would say, okay, let's practice. We've been talking for a while. I was looking for ways to keep the fire in my heart. So mostly I was saying, okay, let's practice a bit because we've been talking for a while. I was looking for ways to keep the fire in my heart. And as soon as I started moving in that way, I could see 3-4 people a day. And after they ended, I told my friend, let's go for a walk again. Something like, I also need to cool down, I need to calm down. Everything is different. And that's exactly it. The key isn't about what's right or wrong. There is the soul there. The key is somewhere in attention. How's it if I keep my attention mostly on myself? I don't drain, I don't tire. But if I, driven even by the most beautiful feeling, the love for conditionality. So why is that? Well, a beautiful girl, your heart ignites, but then you lose focus, and then the soul gives you a nudge. What are you doing? That's where this problem arises. Facing it was a first for me. That's why this problem arises in contrast. When I faced it, it was the first time in my life in a regular children's environment. Laughter is joy. I watched Zadorov. I was laughing like a horse. Then I would go to school and I had a ton of problems. There, maybe we are in hell, not allowed to be happy. When I feel joy, I get hit on the head. So it still gets lodged in your head. It still gets processed. The brain is working. I start to wonder, well, maybe we really are in hell. Maybe it's not allowed to be happy. As soon as I feel joy, I get hit on the head. After many years, I asked this question to Ashan. I said, Ashan, what the hell? Laughter brings trouble. His words fell flat. Right away, some kind of crap. After that, the funniest part is he answered me, and it didn't satisfy me. So apparently he answered that question to such an extent. From my perspective, I couldn't hear him and I couldn't understand. I saw myself laugh and realized thanks to extrasensory perception, I realized physically and mentally it was so, but my energy started to tighten before my eyes. It began to spasm. My heart started to fade. It's like that. And my energy starts to tighten right before my eyes. It begins to spasm. My heart starts to fade. Yeah. Hormones, emotions, they excite me, but my heart is fading. Because when I was laughing, I was really focused, turning up the TV louder. No one was distracting me. Wait, he's about to do something funny. Yeah, I just went there, and at that moment, I was feeling a lot of emotions. At that moment, I was feeling emotions only made me feel emptier faster. I started to actively overflow. And at that moment, when I saw this, I thought, I need to tell everyone. The first thing I said was, guys, here's the situation. Now, don't tell me how many hours you practice. I said, we no longer focus on hours. Because I see that if you're in maximum intense feelings, then the mobility of your consciousness exceeds many times. If you, like me, I practice feeling of love and sincerely. In that state, you can sit all day and then you go out arguing with the security guard at the grocery store. And that's it. The balance is disrupted because your consciousness isn't moving. You're like a stone. When I laugh, I go blub, blub, blub. And so when I saw this mechanism, I immediately realized that yes, when I laugh, mobility increases and capacity increases. I just go blub, blub, blub. What's happening to the soul? You're dying. Stop. And immediately, the problem that disconnects me from the world and makes me dive inside myself. Like when there's a lot of pressure from the outside, you immediately withdraw into yourself. When I stopped doing that, it suddenly turned out that, hey, you can actually feel joy and there are no problems. You can love, you can be passionate. And there are no problems. You can love, you can be passionate. But you need to maintain balance. If you don't maintain balance, if you lose it, you lose that opportunity. In reality, an event happens that pushes you back into yourself from that reality. I'm in Altai, got into a family, real shamanov. I got into a family. Real shamans. These aren't the kind of shamans who are heavily traditional. These are people who were interested in this, who pursued it, and who received training in shamanism. Healing. He even becomes to me in his will, even to me in his will. All was fine. Serious folks. The tradition, everything was good there. These are very serious people. These are powerful methods. And at some point, I even considered whether to tie my fate to these people. We even tried to buy some land there with my friend, but when reality said no, we realized we had to move on. It was such an obvious resistance to reality. We said, well, probably not here. So we also didn't push back stubbornly. Not about this story, about another. We naturally practiced there. Went into the mountains. There is Little Remel and there is also Big Remel. So we went to Little Remel. We spent time in an ascetic state at the source of the river. Bia, I think that's what it was called. The water, there is interesting about water. We returned back to their house. They settled us in a yurt, a real one. This is a place of power. Had it there. And in that yurt, I was so deep in energy, I zoned out. Go into a state of energy perception so that the external world ceases to be perceptible. So I completely lose myself there. And I remember how the outside world crumbled. This endless emptiness, unclear, unperceived. It kept closing in on me more and more. I'm also slowly getting there. Like something, an object, some object. I was slowly letting go of myself and dissolving into all of this, immersing myself. I can't say that it was bad or good, or I was afraid, but that's not what this is about. And at some point, in dissolving into all of this, I'm like, wait, I wanted to build a house for myself. It started to come together, objects here, there, and suddenly I'm back in this yurt. You dissolve until you need something here. Some objects here, there, and suddenly I'm back in this yurt. This is the first time I clearly saw that, damn, you will dissolve until you need something here. And that was the house that I had to build. I built that house, then I spat on myself for doing it, but that was a completely different story. This was already a story from Altai. So, it's important to fulfill all your desires, even the old ones, even the ones that seem questionable. This is exactly why we came here. We came here to sit in the lotus story, possessing a physical body. Not for this. We came here, fully aware that as long as we don't fulfill our passions, there won't be any kind of return. There won't be any freedom. Sometimes a person comes to me and I ask, what do you want? Why are you here? He starts throwing things at me that I should respond to positively and repeatedly and say, good job, that's great. In a positive manner. And I see that his area of sincerity is not reacting at all. So he's trying to convince me and get me to agree. Confirmation. Do you want this? Why tell me now? What do you want from me? Recommendations. Why are you telling me about this right now? Why are you telling me this and trying to pull some recommendations out of me in that direction that you're not even interested in? Your energy, doesn't it resonate with you? My dear friend, honestly, what do you want from this life? Suddenly, someone desires what they fear to admit. Gradually, they become honest with themselves. It's a real disaster. And little by little, through energetic processes, he becomes honest, at least with himself. What mean via energetic processes? That means when he spends some amount of time and effort to feel the area of sincerity, and then each time he consults with it. I used to have a practice for that. Well, it's still there earlier. Sometimes I share, sometimes I don't. I say, look, I had a woman in my practices, a businesswoman, who at some point suddenly realized that everything she had didn't make her happy. In the memory that when you make her happy, she wanted that. Then it turned out that it was just a memory. Nostalgia. You think repeating it will bring it back, but repeating it shows it's different. I had a similar experience with cartoons. But if you do repeat it, it's not like that. It was different in your head. I was looking for a cartoon I watched in my childhood. I also had a funny experience with cartoons. I was looking for this awesome cartoon I watched as a kid, one that really made me feel good. I was like, what cartoon is this? Yeah, when the internet came out, I finally managed to find that cartoon based on my memories by some phrases. I started rewatching it. Like, oh, okay. Okay, fine. Well, at least I found it. Well, I mean, it only exists well in memory. And I just told her, look, write down a few points on paper that you really want. I wrote it down. I say, and now, let's ignite, let's bring out the energy of sincerity. Let's spark that energy of sincerity. I say, and let's read it out loud. She starts reading the first phrase like, so, kind of. She starts reading the second one and it all starts to fade away for her like, no, that's not it. The third one starts reading, and it turns out that there is nothing there at all. Zero of what she really wants. Well, we talked a bit more openly, and we finally got out of her what really made her heart ignite. She actually just wanted a little affection. Male tenderness. Little flower? Well, so that she would be treated like a woman. Because that's not present in the business community. Everyone there saw her as a guy. We were clashing with her, arguing, conflicting, standing our ground. She's just tired of all of this. Do you want to unlock your inner strength and learn to manage energy? The course, Power of Consciousness 1. Practical energy will provide you with tools to improve health, develop intuition, and gain a deeper understanding of the world. Join and start changing your life right now. Link in the description.